Te tuia ki runga, tua ki raro, tua ki roto, tua ki waho. Tua tātou ki tangata, ki te papa o te unei, ki te papa o te orangi nei. Māori ora ki a tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Richard. Right, the meetings are all recorded. I think everybody's probably aware of that now. So just, for the record, we have no apologies, so everybody's here. So that's nice to see everybody. So we'll move from apologies to public forum. So we have there's 2, maybe 3 guests from Nelson Netball Centre. So Andy, if you want to come around to that table. So we have Gordon Shaw from the board, and he assures me he's no relation. And we have Annie Whitehive here as well. So she's the GM.
Yeah.
So I understand. I did have some earlier discussions with development manager, but then he ruptured his clearly quite.
Oh, Jared Locke. Yeah, he did that.
And we didn't actually end up connecting discussions, but welcome along. I gather you've got a presentation to run through with us.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then we'll have opportunity for members to ask any points of clarification.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much to the Saxton committee for allowing us to be here today. We know that you're very busy and that you all have very busy lives. So thank you so much. I know I have a time frame and I have been practicing to stick to that. So just want to make sure that you guys know how much we appreciate you allowing us to come in today. We also have Calissa over there who's joined us as well, and she's our administrator, youth and social coordinator, so she's a massive cog to us as well. So I'll get on with it because I know I have a short time frame. So this slide here just gives you guys a snapshot of who we are at Nelson Netball. If you didn't already know, what the key things around this slide is to point out that we are huge. We have a huge membership. We are across all ages, all abilities, and we are more than just netball on a Saturday. We run multiple programs. We have links with Sport Tasman. If I'm being honest, our links over the years haven't been great, but I know with their new strategic direction and their new restructure, our links are becoming stronger and stronger, and we're starting to collaborate more, which is really, really amazing for us. We live their tagline, more people, more active, more often. We, as you can see from the programs that we provide for our community, and one of their key things is about improving quality experiences, but also aiming at females and young women who make up approximately 90% of our membership base. And that's across everything. That's not just our winter competition. So that's our summer, our socials, which predominantly are more mixed. So we have a huge membership base there. We love netball, we're all about it, and we want to make sure that we're here for a long time. That's part of our new rebrand, our new rollout of our new logo and tagline about growing the lifelong love of netball. So we want to ensure that it's not just the here and now, that we're prepping for the future as well. Next, please. So this, we've called it the Roof Project, just for ease of conversation. So this picture is taken from Hokitika Netball. This is what they've done down there, and this is just a snapshot of a very, very small, I think it's only covering 2 courts. So this is what they've done down there with their courts, just to kind of give you a visual of what it could look like. Talking with one of their presidents down there, it's been a game changer for them. They obviously, their weather is a little bit more torrential than ours potentially at times. But in saying that, for them, what it's done is it's taken that element out of their administrative work. So they're able to look at other projects, offer more things, make it multi-purpose. So why is this roof project? Why do we want to be here today? We want to raise our profile with you lovely people. We want to get it on the table and talking. We know there's more to it than just, hey, we want a roof. Can you make it happen next year? I mean, my board would love that. But there obviously is processes to this. We want to make sure that you guys understand that it's not just about netball winning at the end of the day, it's about the whole region. So it's about, I'm a huge advocate for cross collaboration, cross coding, everything like that. Having a roof over our wonderful courts out here will also bring more revenue in. So those numbers out to the side are 2 key events that Netball New Zealand have, and it's just from a netball perspective because that's obviously our expertise. So NZSS is the New Zealand Secondary Schools, which is the top teams across the country, right throughout. That'll bring in approximately 350, and that's just people to the event, that's not spectators or supporters. So we know that with secondary school sport comes huge following with their parents. And South Island Secondary Schools, which is just the South Island, is a huge event that happens every year. And that's 1,000 plus, and that's just people at the event. That's volunteers, coaches, managers, players. So on top of that is also people. Having a roof over our wonderful courts will give us greater bidding power for those events to come here. The dream is that obviously we want to cover the courts and that people come to us and they're like, we want to come to your region because we know you guys have got quality infrastructure, you've looked after everything. So we understand that everyone talks about Saxons and there's nothing but positive about it. They love it when people come here. They love the fact that a lot of multiple sports are here all in the one place. So we're kind of looking at wanting to future-proof that for us. So we see that this being multi-purpose, not just netball winning, the whole region, other codes being able to use as well as my dream. So love to be able to put multi-purpose turf down as well, but I know that that's huge costs and I completely understand that. But that's the dream of ours. And then we know for us, our weather has plagued us the last 2 seasons and we're not the only sport that's doing that. We have Summer League, which is on a Tuesday. We're supposed to be in week 4. We're in week 2 because we've had to cancel the first 2 due to weather. And then third week, it was 26 degrees. So it's not just the rain, it's also the heat as well that we're concerned about. So yeah, that's kind of our why in a really, really brief snapshot of it. Next slide. Now this, Gordon will talk to this, but what this is showing you is this is our extended whānau, this is our extended family. So this is all the links that we had with local sponsorship, partnerships, and also key funders. We've worked really, really hard over the years to build up these relationships and keep them, and they're all really, really happy with what we're producing and what we're doing. All our accountabilities are done on time. So we want you to know that this is more than us just asking for a handout. We want to understand what to do from here, whether it can be even looked at, and we just want to get the conversations open, but we have strong links right throughout our community as well.
Thanks, Annie. And on behalf of Gordon Shaw, I'm one of the board members. So first of all, an apology from our chair of the board, Olivia Martin, who couldn't make it today. So I'm subbing in off the bench. And again, wanted to acknowledge the committee for allowing us to present briefly to you. Also acknowledge Sport Tasman for their support. And really kind of wrapping up here is understanding that from a governance perspective for Nelson Netball, we've been going through a transition as well, is updating our board members, updating our focus, being very focused on revisiting our strategy for the future about how we deliver to our stakeholders. And when we talk about our stakeholders, we're talking about our players and our clubs. But then when we look outside to our external stakeholders is having a seat at the table, is that what we've realised is that we came late to the party around some of the current LTP processes. But what we're wanting to do is essentially engage with the committee, but also with officials for the future of how we allocate that scarce funding to Saxton Field, but then how the sports get their slice of that. And so one example we wanted to raise with you is that in the current LTP process, there is funding allocated around a resurfacing of courts. And what we're saying is, while we're in discussions around could we try and put a roof on there, would we want to spend money on resurfacing? Because if there was a roof, we'd probably need a slightly different surface on the ground. So things like that. So from a board perspective, what we're wanting to leave you with today is that we want to engage. we want to be part of the process. We understand all of the restrictions and all of the things that go with funding sport. But how do we help us to get to that position where in the future we can put a roof on those courts? And at a board level, part of our strategy has been, could we chop that down into smaller chunks? So essentially trial a roof on one of the courts or look at different options. And the reason that we wanted to put our sponsors up there is some of our sponsors are actively engaging with us around if there's opportunity for branding. And I know that that's a quandary here because there's some rules around what can and can't be branded in this particular precinct. So those are all the things that we know that we have to work out. But today was really just about flying our flag, saying that Nelson Netball is part of this vibrant facility that we have here, and that we want to work with councils and funding agencies around the future of how we continue to invest in those courts out there, make them fit for purpose for netball, but fit for purpose for all the sports that might want to use those in the future. So on behalf of the board, just want to thank you for that opportunity, and maybe in a little time that we've got left, maybe just open it up for questions. So thank you.
Do that. Thank you very much, too, for your presentation. That was good. Concise. I didn't have my stopwatch going, but you did really well, I think. So,
I've been practicing.
Yeah. So, any questions from any of the members or staff? Brent?
Thanks. So, Arnie, have you got any idea of the cost? What are we talking in terms of $100 or $1 million?
That would be lovely.
Yeah. Have you done any initials? Have you talked to Hokitika in terms of what theirs cost?
No, we haven't. So our business manager was looking at that. So he was investigating that, and then obviously we haven't thought any further of what the entire project would cost.
And have you thought how much the netball themselves would contribute?
Absolutely. So at board level, and this is the legacy of previous boards, is that we are cognizant that we have to be prudent with managing our finances, and that we have built up some reserves so that we are in a position to put money into the game. So Arnie covered that very well, is that at board level, we said if we went to pricing, would we look at something that's semi-permanent? Would it just be one court as a trial? But in ballpark figures, it's millions of dollars if we were to cover the whole thing. That's why at a board level, we said, well, why don't we try, because there's one main court there, as you walk in past the pavilion, that could be the one to try it and say, well, if we tried it there, and then we can do a proof of concept and then look at what it might be to do the whole thing. But yes, we're looking at millions of dollars. But for our board, we've been very focused on making sure that we retain funds so that we're able to come to the party and say, when this happens, we'll put money in. Will our sponsors be able to put money in? What funding do we get from the councils? And then are there other external funding parties, like lottery grants and places like that we can go to put it all together so that we make this a viable option?
So without a cost and without how much Nelson Netball currently have, on a percentage per $1 million, is that a 20%, 40% contribution the board would be aiming to with community funding? Do you have any idea?
Within 20 to 30%.
Okay, thank you.
That's fairly standard out here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool. Any other questions, Campbell?
Yeah, thank you. And I must say what your board is doing is excellent. And just through the chair, you spoke potentially if we were to look at a roof needing another surface under that. Is that the sort of surface that could work with other codes such as football, or is it simply needing to be set up for netball only?
No. And the example we use there is Waimea College. They put a roof on one of their surfaces and made it multi-purpose. So their football team will train in there in the wet as well when the netballers aren't using it. So the answer is yes. We need a surface that can be great for netball, but it's also multi-codes.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions, Tim or Joe?
No, but can I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you, because Councillor Murray ask my question, because it always comes back to the
Yeah.
money.
Money.
No, that's all good by me.
Yeah.
But I also did want to acknowledge the fact that what netball does do, it manages to capture that age group where we're seeing a drastic decline in sport, which is women and young women.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to also acknowledge that when it comes into my priorities. And where I'm coming from is it's one of the few sports where they're actually able to capture that market that is declining significantly.
Yeah.
And also flying the flag for men's netball. We're seeing an increase in men's participation as well, which has some growing pains, because now we're having to say, do we actually have a separate round just for men's teams, rather, because at the moment they're either mixed or they play together. So it's great for the sport that participation rates are up, and it's not just in Nelson. Nationally, the rates are up for netball. So we're pretty happy as a sport that we're capturing players, and people are still prepared to put their kids, especially kids, into that environment to start their sporting journey.
Like our numbers have increased, especially in the social aspect as well. So we have this amazing facility behind us, which we are so grateful for. I love it because we're right next door to each other, so we don't have to travel across town like at other centres. We're outgrowing this significantly because we share it with obviously basketball, who are also growing. Our social leagues are huge, like spiked, and that's across our mainland zone. So to give you an example, we have 52 teams turn up here on a Tuesday. We have 8 on a waiting list because we can't fit them. So we try not to go across multiple nights so that people have a choice to go to other codes in the summer, because summer's not our season, is how we see it. A roof, for example, would allow us to go longer, so then we can capture those people. Our indoor league has gone from 12 to 24, so it's doubled in size. So we're obviously doing something right, and we love having this as a problem that we have too many people, but we also want to make sure that we can keep capturing them so that we can make sure that this stays for longer and people stay in our sport. We have, I think our oldest player is 85. And I'm 40 and I cringe at the thought of having to go back out on the netball court. So we want to make sure that they're here for that long. But yeah, we're growing and we love it. We just want to make sure that we can be here for a long period of time. So thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
One more question.
One more, Brent.
Thank you. And it's to Mr. White and Mr. Kirby. So the question is, we're so far down our LTP planning phase now.
Yeah.
Is it worthy of Nelson Netball arranging a public forum to both councils? Because I'm not convinced that this process will pick this up in this LTP process.
No, that's what I was going to raise too, that they probably need to talk to the relevant staff.
Just so you have that opportunity to talk.
Right. Thank you.
I can just comment on that.
Whether it's not the next joint council.
It could probably in the next joint council meeting. I mean, we are down the track and a lot of projects have been raised, but the final button hasn't been pushed. So there's always opportunity to come back in. Whether it's successful, I don't know, but yep.
Thank you for that opportunity. Yeah,
But yeah, the LTPs, as you
Well
know,
done.
we're renewed every 3 years, and the lead up to it gets longer and longer as it kind of evolves. So yeah, I think at the previous meeting we kind of approved the capital budget, so there might be some potential to shuffle some stuff in there. Certainly we take, I think that people have been listening and take the point about the surface renewal, which is kind of comes up as one of the line items in our asset management, activity management plan that we're looking at in the meeting. But I urge you to engage with the relevant staff in particular. These are the two boss guys, and then they've got other staff here. So Richard and Andrew here. So perhaps have a discussion with them about the process moving forward. So
Thank you.
what might be required for maybe getting the next one, or what we can do to try and facilitate that. Yeah, I had a couple of questions, but others have asked them. Obviously, it is a staged thing that can happen. So you commented on that. That's good. I see Christchurch just opened a huge multi-million-dollar complex.
I had the privilege of having a look around there last week, and it's incredible, and it's well overdue.
I'd be happy to move.
Hagley Park bring back a few memories, a few icy mornings. It's okay, yeah.
Yeah, I watched it being built, and I was curious to know what it was and discovered on one trip down there. Well, so,
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming along.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome to retire from the table and stay around if you wish to. But might also just see if we can have a quick discussion with some relevant staff to kick off the process, or at least exchange emails or contacts or whatever.
Awesome.
So do you have a relationship with some staff already within the councils?
Yes.
So you've already got contacts who you work with?
We can do that, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is any declarations of interest. Anybody have any conflicts in this particular meeting or any to add to the register of interests? No, all good on that. Confirmation of the minutes. So these are the minutes of the 8th of August, our last meeting. Anybody have any issues with how they were recorded? All true and correct? Would somebody like to move that they be approved? Tim and Joe? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, so the first the reports is the Saxton Field activity report. I think Paul is going to present. It's going to be busy today. I think the rest of it.
Yeah.
Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, kia ora. Yeah, Jane and Carl are away at the moment, so just me from Nelson, and there's a few other staff here as well to chip in if needed. So I just plan to run through this in order, and please just interrupt me if you've got questions. It's probably the easiest way. As you know, this is just a report to be received. So we'll just kick off with the wayfinding. So contractors are underway with the installation, and hoping to be finished by the end of this month. Moving on to Saxton Oval capital projects. So the fibre connection to the block is now done, and a couple of extra closed circuit TV cameras to be installed, just for the monitoring of the changing room there and entryways. Path development is a small correction at 3.4 that won't be completed spring, which is this month. So it's most likely that it will be underway and just completed after Christmas. So that's the path, the gravel one that's going to go in behind archery and softball and hockey. Negotiations continue with the Radio New Zealand mast, lane purchase. Can't really talk too much more about that one. On to 3.6, baseball. So just continuing to develop plans on that, and fencing contract has been engaged for a fence at Champion Green. I think, am I right? You're looking at the aerial field for the future one. Yep. So that's capital. Any questions on that? We'll move on to operational.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, the field, the radio mast tower purchase, like, I guess from a Tasman perspective, we have no idea of the timeline. So there's nothing in our LTP. Is there a timeline? Is it within this 10 years? Is it outside 10 years?
Hoping for it to be within 10 years. I can answer to a really high level, not getting into any detail because it's in negotiation. But if you need any more, Andrew might be able to help out. But my understanding is that it's still being that timeline is still being discussed and it's uncertain. So perhaps within a few months we might have more information and more agreement. But there is some uncertainty around that. But it's looking like it would be within a 10-year window.
So with that in mind, is there any conversations with our officers in terms of, because currently we have nothing in a long-term plan, is my understanding for this?
For the purchase?
Yeah.
My understanding is that it would be coming from development contributions. So it is in the long-term plan, but not in the Saxton Field budget.
From development contributions or RFCs?
Well, for Nelson City Council's development contribution.
Because again, for our officers, I believe that we fund net debt. So any expenditure of RFCs will result in an increased debt, which is a rate increase for us. So I guess just a request, if there's a heads up, not necessarily for the public forum, but at an officer level, we'd be really keen to understand early indications. And that would be Grant. Yeah.
So I understand there's a meeting out early next year or something, so there may be some progress by the time of the next meeting.
LTP is shadowing.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, that might clarify the timeline and process. May not be an immediate thing that happens, so it could be quite a period before it happens. Any other questions on the capital items? Operational, Paul?
Yep, moving on to 4.1. So there have been some issues around irrigation. Majority of these now been remediated. 4.2 and 4.3 is just around just a bit of additional activity from football this season and sort of stepping outside of their traditional season. So that's had a bit of an impact on the renovation program. Just a note on the stockpile material that on the circus screen, and that's still being remediated, so the ground's not quite back to where it was. And 4.5 is just around to work, just trying to identify rubbish bins where they're not needed and remove them. And then the last one in the operational activity is a car park. So the Oaklands there, where the median strip has had some vegetation removed and replaced with some lower flats. Yeah, so that's just a real brief one for operational activity this time around.
Paul, just on the that football usage there, and I was playing football last night here, actually, and there's people everywhere playing football. Have we actually had any discussions with Nelson-based football, Nelson suburbs around what they're actually using, when they're using it, and what they're using it for? I note that I mean, when I walked through here at 8 o'clock last night, some of the field here had, 30 odd mini football goals just sitting there, and it wasn't exactly in a great state. And it would be, I guess it'd be good to know if we're actually having a conversation with them around what the land they're using, and making sure that they're staying within their limits, I guess.
Yeah, it is a wider discussion that we want to have with football, and I think Mitch mentioned to me there's a concept from Sport New Zealand that Balance is Better, which is trying to keep codes to within their season so that the players and participants have opportunity to do other codes and it doesn't overlap. So there is some wider issues. I'd probably have to defer to Mitch if you've had any conversations about the current situation.
Yeah, kia ora, everyone. Rob and I are actually currently working through some teething issues where suburbs have been going directly to the grounds teams to get markings and things like that. Yeah, due to some staff changes at Nelmac, they weren't quite aware of what they were doing for free. So they were just reacting and doing some things. So we're working through that at the moment to put it back into line. But generally, summer football should be a social league, and that's always been the case, and that's fine. They've added an additional competition that involves 20 odd during their fields, which they've never had before. So we can't just click our fingers and suddenly come up with 20 fields. So we're working through that at the moment.
Yeah, just a follow-up, are they paying to use these fields? So that are we giving them a ground fee? Yeah.
Even though that's probably tied up with the leases and arrangements anyway, is it?
No, say yes, right. Yeah. We charge them 10% of their maintenance costs.
Cool.
Yeah. Tim,
Cheers, I just had to follow up on that. As you got in the report there briefly, so that's giving them a difficulty for us to maintain or service the fields because they're being used more year round or more extensively. Is it creating real difficulty, not just that communication issue, which I feel for you there? It must happen every time there's a new committee on the football.
Yeah, and what happened this year is we got two national tournaments, South Island tournaments that happened during September. And September is our only window of opportunity to renovate and flip up the fields.
Yep.
So we lost that. So we're gonna have to do a major renovation in Auckland. We're gonna work with them to find that window.
Okay, and ongoing, is that going to be a bit of an issue? It's great that whole lot of codes are increasing their activity successfully, but it makes it difficult.
We're asking the codes to go back to the the national body and it's the same in every county. Sort of that month.
Yeah, okay.
In spring, so to try and avoid that month for national tournaments and grassroots basically.
Okay, cool.
And we'll be back, but
Yeah, there's also the Harakiki Green, which is funding in, it's the next item, the LTP, there's there is funding in to prepare that field for multi-use, so that might add a bit of capacity as well. I don't know if it's going to help the extended season, but it might help.
And just quickly for following question to that, obviously there's a lot of cost involved in these fields, etc., but they're utilised well. From a governance perspective, both from the individual councils, is there something we need to increase funding, or is it a case of changing how you charge? Or all these issues also work their way through?
I think we're within our capacity, our field usage capacity there. We have ample amounts of fields.
Okay.
And I think our budgets are quite.
Okay. Cool.
Budgets are under real pressure, though, for this coming LTP, as the elected members know. We are taking some pretty big hits across the board, which is going to put pressure on. I would be very surprised if it doesn't. But then there is the other side of it too, which Mitch would probably agree with me that interseason or activity between seasons, it probably doesn't really matter how much you throw at your renovation. If you don't have time to renovate, then you're not going to be able to renovate. And that is the tension that sports and councils always have in terms of that extending seasons. And that's a political tension that, if we are seeing more and more of that happening, that is going to become something that this committee is going to have to start dealing with.
Well, and if the only chair that's right, quick follow up on that. I empathise where you're at, because I know when we did have committees, and it might be strange as Nelson City Council, we had committees, it was a good bit of oversight or help or support from a governance level there. If there's anything we can do to help from a governance perspective for the Saxton, it's just a bridge that communication. I know you deal with them extremely well, but I know that sometimes these codes take it for granted. I know in the past winter codes, I'm not picking on football, but other codes as well can understand we take for granted the grounds and make use of them, not realising the need to be able to get on them with a Mara or a Cora, etc. So please reach out. I'm just conscious that we don't have that sort of step with the committees from the NCC side of it. But if you need any support from committee members, I'm sure I can't speak on behalf of everyone here, but happy to be a bit of a bridge on those communications. A lot of work for you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I didn't notice circus green was being used by schools, well, presumably schoolboy cricket on Saturday, so it must be in reasonably good shape as it was able to be played.
A bit bumpy, but
Yeah. Okay, the events section.
Can I just?
Oh, sorry, Jill.
Thank you. I just on 4.4, the surface green stock of flood material, the remediation that's being carried out, I'm assuming that's within the Nelson City Council budget, or is it coming out of the operational budget for Saxton Field?
no, my understanding is it came out of a council, Nelson City Council remediation from the flood event.
Okay, thank you. I was just confused.
Most of the material
You
came
can
from.
offer some if you'd like though.
You're lucky the stream was on the Nelson side. All right, events.
So 5.1, 2 and 3 is just around the cricket, which was reported in the last there as well, just the dates. And just, I guess the update there is around the 5.3 with the exemption, which both councils have now granted the exemption. More work to be done on that, I think, in future.
Well, there's ongoing conversations with Central Districts Cricket and Nelson City Council in terms of whether that advertising can be reduced. So that's what we've been asked to do, but council has granted the exemption. But I do think, as Paul says, the bigger issue here is you've got a management plan that you recommended to the councils, that council signed off on, which doesn't permit alcohol advertising. And we're going to be in this exact same position next season, or even if we get to this position next season, given the awareness of that policy. So I think there's a bit of thinking we've got to do about that. And I'll be probably with Ed having a chat with Central Districts Cricket, potentially New Zealand Cricket, around what we can do there.
I think you should go to New Zealand Cricket as well.
If we can get to them.
If you can get to them, yeah, that's right.
On the process of that topic, and that was a decision two councils made separately to achieve what decision it was made at this joint committee. Is it possible, worth considering, that in future that we make that decision in a joint council? So we make the decision here as our representatives at this Saxton committee, but then when we take that recommendation to our councils, rather than going to Nelson makes a decision and TDC make a decision, and they both got to be on the same page, that we make a decision, the whole both councils like a joint in the room, so we vote at it on a once-off.
So that might be a timeline issue,
Yeah, I think with this incident that we've just been through around us, it was to do with timing and the urgency of getting something through, you know, as Saxton members, that you had quite a bit of pressure on you to turn this around. So I think there's a timing thing. So I think, Tim, that could be a good option, but actually I think the better option is that we don't get ourselves into this situation where we're looking for an exemption every year, because it starts to look a bit silly if we're doing that. So I think let's see what we can achieve through discussions, and then there may be some more work that needs to be done.
For my follow-up, if that's right, for the chair, to the committee here and the chair, we can raise that we consider changing that exemption rule, to remove that exemption rule, or whatever the council decided, or in the future we made that decision. And I realise at the time that was, we couldn't foresee the outcome, or we did have as time pressures, but in the future we had a joint council, because the majority of what happened was you had one council, an initial view one way, and one council view the other way. But if you had both councils there, the majority view would have been different, and probably would have been quite favourable for the game, rather than what happens is we have one council, another council making a different decision, and that cancels out what the other council's decision was. But we were all there together, as in that situation it would have been a majority decision. We've gone that way than it initially did for the NCC. I'm just putting it out there for the chair and staff. That's something we may be considering, but as the officers quite rightly mentioned, this is going to be a potential risk or perceived risk in the future, and maybe we need to make some changes so we don't signal that perceived risk in the future for discussions that come up.
Okay, so my thoughts are, I'd quite like to hear maybe at the next meeting any update on where discussions have got with Central Districts Cricket and perhaps New Zealand Cricket on this issue, and what actually is involved, because I found it quite hard to find out exactly what their advertising involved. Was it within the arena, or was it wide across the whole field? Wasn't that clear to me. So I guess there's those sort of issues that I think personally it would be useful for those discussions to happen that Andrew indicated. Would be a good idea before we come back and think about a review of the reserve management plan. We've only just put it in place. So I know we're supposed to review them every 3 years, but whether we have to do that earlier or not, I think there should be some bit of additional information on it.
It's a bit of food to do that. Food to thought. Bit of food for thought, just to keep on top of mind when it's appropriate, because there is going to be a perceived risk regardless. And obviously us do whatever we can to remove that. See, Bruce.
Thank you. All right. There'll be more on this subject. Okay, can we move on, Paul?
Sure, so 5.4 is Nelson Half, which was just a couple of days ago. I'm sorry, I don't have an update on that.
I was involved in helping set it up and I took part in it. It was a record number of entrants this year.
Fabulous.
I think it was close over 900 across the 4 events. So the organising committee was very happy with the turnout. We got through before the rain came later in the day, so everybody was very happy. So it was a very successful event.
And 5.5 and 5.6 are just an update on the cups and tournaments for football and hockey, which I think were reported last time as well. It's just been brought through.
Can I just add one? There's the South Island Masters track and field champs are here at the Athletics Oval, 19th to 21st of January. So that moves around the South Island centres. We have so Tasman centres coming up this year. We may have it again next year as well. The process has been 2 years in a row, but we've got our first one ahead of time just because Canterbury Masters, who were due to have it for their second year in a row, and now organising our national championship. So I kindly agreed that we would do the South Island one 2024. So they're hoping that'll attract about 80 athletes, including locals and visitors from elsewhere. I've already had some expressions of interest from North Island athletes, Wellington, because we're quite handy. They can come here and do it with warm up, meet, and then go to the national champs a week later. So that's appealing to a few people. Okay, thank you. The activity management plan is coming up. So next items.
Yes.
All right, we'll receive this report with the next one, I think, later in the meeting. So we can now move to the 6.2, the draft Saxton Field activity management plan. Paul's speaking on this as well. He's part of the team that's been working on this document.
Yep.
First one we've ever had, apparently. So.
Yes, that's right. So this is the first one we've had. So as I said earlier, Jane and Carla are away. They've both been quite busy on this plan as well. So I'm presenting it on behalf of them. We do have Mitch here and Andrew, just in case there's some questions come up, but it covers a pretty broad topic. And also Lynn Peacock, who's a contract supervisor for facilities.
And Hannah, who's our Parks and Facilities Manager, he did on Zoom.
Right. Yeah, welcome.
So, yeah, I guess a standalone AMP for Saxton has been sort of a natural progression since this committee was formed, really. Before that, the AMPs were sort of buried in the 2 councils' activity management plans and quite difficult to coordinate. And this committee wouldn't have seen the AMPs because those AMPs just went up to the individual councils. So this is really the first one that's come to this committee as well. And because I guess it was in chapters previously, it is probably fairly brief and straight to the point this time around. And something that would evolve, I think, over future cycles. And you'll notice in this one that the financials are shown slightly differently between the Nelson and Tasman district councils in the appendix, and that's just a product of the 2 councils' financial system being different. So that's something we could work on in future editions, or even maybe for the final to get that looking a bit more aligned. The resolution is just the proposed resolution is just that council recommends, committee recommends to each council that the draft being approved to inform the development of the AMPs. And as you probably know, the final version won't be adopted for another year. And it will come back to this committee before that as well, for that final to be signed off. So as a draft, I'm really happy to take guidance at this meeting or after the meeting, offline, on any aspect of the AMP. And just, I guess, remembering that it's approved to inform the long-term plan. So it's not verbatim going to go into it, and councils have the ability to make changes after. Yeah, I've already noted a few typos and missing words here and there, so those sorts of things we can fix up after the go. And the timing, just to note, is a bit unusual for Nelson because the meeting where this recommendation is received by councils on Thursday. So a bit of a procedural difference there. Maybe there's a bit more time. So that agenda is already out, but it shouldn't really make any difference. It's more of a procedural thing. Shouldn't make any impact on the way you consider it today as a committee. So hopefully I can answer any questions. I'm happy to go through it any way which you like. Whether you want to go through it page by page or just.
Yeah, wouldn't the committee have a lot of questions or comments? Do you want any way you want me to go through? I mean, just send the editorial stuff, which I picked up quite a few, as I tend to do. Can send those direct to staff. But if you have any kind of maybe more significant issues, or you're not sure whether they're a significant one, but I'm open to suggestions. So I had thought page by page, but I can just read out the number, and if you do have a particular query on any particular page, do it that way. But any thoughts for anybody in the committee?
I've got a question on page 2, and then the rest of it's probably more around budget than words.
All right, so that's the kind of introductory report.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at that first. So
just a question, Paul. So good idea. Have Saxton Fields have its own AMP. I don't see. I said September 23. I'm just in terms of council officers or TDC officers involved in the drafting and the wording of this. If it's truly a 50-50 and we're partners, really keen to see more of the Tasman District councillors along the 7th of November and the 9th of November, perhaps, just in terms of that joint right. Because then when we've had questions of our officers, we might be able to get some answers to some of the budget figures. We sort of feel a little bit left in the dark when it comes down to the financial parts. And so I guess the plea is, please include our team in the drafting and the ins and outs of that, and we'll come to the questions when it comes to the financials. Fair to say that's just the first part of the process.
okay, thanks, Fred. Any other comments on the introductory report? Okay, let's go on our agenda. I think it's
Sorry, can I just respond through the chair?
Yes, sure.
We'd love Tasman staff to be really very included in the preparation of the app. So perhaps next year we can look at, or next time we can look at assembling a workshop, or it's my understanding that the grant has been included in all emails, and that we have been, we'd love it to be a really collaborative process.
So it would come through Aleph, and I love it. So then Mr. Dewey and Grant can see how that navigates.
Staff can work it out.
Yes.
We can work it out myself.
Will be Richard, you know. Oh, that's much more comfortable calling you Mr. Kirby.
all right. Thanks, Hannah. As the chair, I don't know exactly what level of communication happens.
I think it's an operational matter.
Yeah, so
as Hannah says, so
leave it up to
we'll look into what happened this year and make sure it's better next time round.
Yeah, I'm happy to schedule some joint in-person workshops.
Yeah,
Whatever needs to happen.
that sounds good. Thank you. Right, so on the agenda pages 12, this is where the draft activity plan starts. So then that's presume it's the same as what's on screen. Yeah, find it. Yeah. Okay, so there's a bit of preliminary stuff there, which probably not got any contents on page 14. Just yell out if you're 15. 16, yeah. 17 starts the purpose of the plan. So any comments on that? Those of you familiar with activity management plans, probably too much different. Page 18, continuation of basically what's in place, all the different codes, sports activities, passive and recreation, we're all there. 1920, a bit more detail on some of the issues. Further information. Any queries on any of that? Comments? You're allowed, Paul, if there's anything you want to add as we're kind of going through. '21. It's a little important little phrase of why we do it. Yes. And then this kind of strategic direction starts on page 22. So, if anyone has any questions on that? Comments, queries?
Have we ever looked at, just through the chair, have we ever looked at having a joint strategic direction of what Saxton's Field's purposes? I know we've got the Nelson City Council one there, and then we scroll down and we've got the Tasman District Council one, and I think looking at that page, to what Councillor Murray said, is it seems to be very Nelson top heavy, a little bit of Tasman there, and I just wonder if we can look at a way to make that a bit more Saxton's Field.
It's good. I think it's a good point, Cameron. We probably could do that in terms of the next, certainly the next one would be useful.
We do have a joint vision from the reserve management plan.
Yeah, I guess it's right. We have, it's not as if it's completely in a vacuum.
Quite extensive. Have you got that in the AMP, the reserve management plan? Because that is kind of the driver, like community outcomes for the council sit there as a fact.
Yeah.
But actually the driver for how we invest in Saxton Field comes from the management plan, and that does have that strategic direction in it.
Yeah, page 21, why we do it, the vision of the Saxton Field Reserve Management Plan is Saxton Field is where the regional community comes together to place forward with the creation, boost of environment for everyone, and then it goes into the community outcomes and the vision for both councils, which I thought there was more for Tasman. But
Yeah, it just looks very Nelson. Maybe if we go down a page.
Yes, next page is.
There is a carry through
Sorry.
where it's a bit longer.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find it because your page.
Yeah,
is
it comes
not-
under table 3, which is page 23. I
I'm
think
on
it's-
page 22.
and how it relates to the TDC's community outcomes. I mean, maybe given the comments, it's worth perhaps going back to 21 as emphasising that this comes out of the reserve management plan as Andrew's indicated, and highlighting that just perhaps in a slightly different font or something that emphasises it might be useful to. Because otherwise it does look a little bit, I agree, that it looks a little bit like it's driven by
I think
the community outcome.
through the chair, I think it's down to if we're sharing the workload and collaborating. Nelson City Council staff don't have knowledge of Tasman issues as thoroughly as Tasman staff do. So once we are collaborating together, then that will for sure be more apparent.
Just if I give us a guess, so there was substantial work from memory the last Saxton Field Committee in terms of that vision and that. So it's probably already in there. So probably forget Nelson and Tasman's vision and go back to the reserve management plan.
I think you've got to have the community outcomes, you know, in terms of the legality of the AMP and its purpose. You've got to have the council's community outcomes, but it needs to speak very strongly to the vision that both councils have agreed to in terms of Saxton itself. And I agree that feels quite light in the way it's included. So it could be emboldened or something like that, just to strengthen it up, because that is the joint statement for the councils, which is rightly upfront, but it doesn't have the profile and the way that it's presented at the moment.
We do have a big document that we worked on last.
Yeah, that's right. We did the reserve management plan,
which is a joint with both councils. So refined. It was very helpful.
So yeah, I think if there's a
reference to
a large prominent section on that, would be a good suggestion for the next draft. I think. Yeah. Right, just the community contributions to community outcomes for both Nelson and Tasman around 22 and 23. Page 24 has a wonderful word, prioritisation. All happy on that?
Yep.
Our partners and stakeholders. So there's a section on that on page 26. I thought actually in some cases under key linkages, some of the national codes drive some things as well. whether it's who their sponsors are, as we've recently experienced, but this kind of health and safety stuff I'm aware comes through from the national level as well. Certainly does in terms of, you know, needs for throwing equipment on the athletics track that I know a little bit about. So, and I assume that's for some of the other codes as well. So maybe we just need to. Sometimes there are standards, as I understand, for facilities as well. If they want to bid for island or national events, they've often got to meet a minimum requirement, or it's desirable, but sometimes there's a minimum requirement.
So we could put code requirements or something.
Yeah, I just think it would be useful to emphasise that. I think because it is a bit of a driver in terms of what we can have take place here sometimes. Any other thoughts?
Just a comment here on that page 26, the change in demand. I know all codes are up and down in their popularity. Seeing here participation levels in traditional sporting codes are below average and declining nationally. But then seeing
locally we've seen it be back in the
trend today and on previous days, they seem to be back in the trend to an issue. So I'll say this is untrue. It's on page 26, but of interest there. Whether things have changed drastically in that situation, sporting codes could get the impression of a bit of an up. There's been quite a demand for improving surfaces and the mountain fields. Maybe it's just the winter codes, traditional. Just a bit of commentary here. Not that you necessarily have to change it again, but in case it needs to be a little added, yeah, if it's dated.
Yeah, that's right. There's increasing expectations that some things will take place on artificial surfaces. Hockey led that a long time ago, and there's now a lot of talk about artificial surfaces that can service some of the other codes like football.
Well, if I may ask the officers on that, on page 15 and about was it page 26 on there, and that change in future demand, are you seeing that an increase in traditional sports? I know things go up and down. Rugby, basketball, football seem to go up and down.
There appears to be there are changes, but they seem to be moving towards more personal competitions.
Okay.
Summer tournaments, short-term activity.
Yeah.
Rather than the traditional.
Okay.
Set they run through the winter.
So I mean, I see things like mountain biking, etc. People can organise themselves after work, but then I was sort of seeing in the last 2-3 years, the demand seems to be increasing, but it might be just my perception increasing. Of course, traditional stuff, cricket, soccer, rugby.
I think there's a move towards more informal.
Okay.
I'm guessing it's data Sport Tasman.
That's
Probably
Sport
have
New
it for Saxton.
Yeah, the Sport New Zealand Insights tool. That's
I don't want to, it's my fault distracting a little bit, but I just want to see that comment that's sort of on that paragraph. You know, it seems like we're all trending very much downwards, but I seem to get a mix of.
We have Tony.
The feeling is that it's simply has reversed a wee bit and it's taking out certainly netball as volleyball, basketball, simply increases in numbers, especially in the junior rank, not so much in the senior rank. If you look at senior rugby and those sort of things are still in a bit of a dire strait, but certainly in the junior ranks. We've just had at this time of year, we do a census for all our secondary schools. They have to do a census every year with the first few schools that we've got the results in from just this week have all shown an increase in participation of their students in school sport, which was really encouraging because it hasn't been that way for a few years or so. It seems that, so in my mind, that there is a trend up, and organised sport is still a huge part of certainly the Tamariki orangutan.
Through the chair and stuff. If you think it needs a little bit of extra in that paragraph, I just conscious that in one sense it's given a reflection that hey, we don't really need to be worrying about traditional sports, but now we're getting a lot of push saying actually we need some more fields, we need some more time, we need some more. So we're just getting two.
So I think there is probably scope for broadening some of
I think
the
we
discussion
can
in the area.
I'll leave
ask
that.
Tony for some data and
Yeah,
make sure it
yeah,
reflects.
just so we're not giving
reflected
it.
in the-
Yeah, I think it's really just stating that it's below the national average, but it's still obviously the need to provide for it, but we can, yeah.
Or Nelson, average in Nelson, then Western decline. No, all good. It's just something that we don't sort of counter debate when it comes to investing or public reading it on. Yeah. And
I think the thing that stands out for me perhaps, and that is that we say that nationally organised sport is declining, but we don't do the counter to say that actually people are getting more involved in informal sporting activity as well. So, your seminar side or whatever. That I think that's really important to have in there, because I do agree with you, Tim, that if we're making a statement about decline, it makes it feel like there's less need, but actually this is about change and future demand, and I think we need to make that clear.
Especially saying traditional sports, because I know traditional has had to take a bit of a hit, and 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, but possibly traditional sports in a bit of an increase again. I'll leave that to figures you think are appropriate. Need to be just a bit of balance.
Out of it for the final.
And it might be worth adding a comment that some codes, the participation by younger people was high, and then there's a
Might be after we
teenage drop off, that can go on for a while. So quite a few have got challenges, and we've looked at it. Athletics, how can we keep some of the kids, with big numbers turning up for kids athletics, keep them going through their teenage years and on into senior stuff is an ongoing challenge. Mainly because we export quite a lot of them.
And that was probably helps form, especially we're talking about trying to,
It's probably similar in other codes.
not trying to get the sports overlapping, and that's probably where we get leads through from sports overlapping, but, and then that makes it difficult. But
That's right, kids can't often do more than one thing, because they're expected to do.
I think that point in there about planning for increased flexibility is really, really good. I think that's really important. Yeah, it was good that Netball talked about that a little bit this morning, because I think that's going to become more of a thing as time goes by, flexible spaces.
Okay. Your little challenges there to try and capture some of that.
no, it's all good. It's all good.
Page 27. This kind of continues a bit as well, doesn't it, in terms of demographic changes and also migration trends. So some of what we've covered is probably something that could be looked, but continue on into this section perhaps as well.
Very good.
I wonder if some comment for you, the chair, about there's a lot more older people staying in sport. Masters are becoming more and more.
Something that's right.
Yeah, some of the sporting activities.
I'm trying to hold off looking at the masters.
Sometimes you got to give me choice though.
Good luck to
As the years tick on.
I have the argument with the surgeon every bloody week. No, I'm not playing golf.
We do Frisbee golf now. Acceptable.
I don't know, there's some pretty serious injuries in golf, judging by my household.
All right, 29, key issues and opportunities. Anything on this section? Couple of pages there.
Yeah, I guess
29 or.
I guess it's the first part of, so a dedicated 10-year field operations and renewals program. So I get that the aim is to have that by 27-37. So I'm just interested in how we got there for the next LTP. So I'd love to stay with
how they dovetail in.
Yeah, so some of the costs as we get through that.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be something
Yeah,
else.
we'll get the specifics as we go into,
Yeah. Discuss. Okay, over the page, there's 3 more there above the table tennis photo.
Yeah, Tom, you can take up table tennis.
Well, I have been doing table tennis, got guys that beaten by 8-year-olds. Story and 12-year-olds. And I thought I was pretty good. Good story.
Sorry, can I just ask a question on just stepping back to that changing demographics? Have we covered off in there around immigration? So we've got
I think there is
migration. We've got something about migration of 25 to 45-year-olds, but actually immigration And diversity is actually it's quite a big issue, I think, that we're going to have to plan for.
It's definitely spoken to at length in our Parks and Reserves and for Nelson City Council. don't know about the Tasman one, but some things didn't quite come across into the Saxton field one, but I'm not sure if there's specific mention of that.
I don't think we've got it in there. But I think it is something we're going to have to increasingly be thinking about in terms of provision of our leisure and recreation spaces and places. Sorry about my tongue.
Okay.
No, mine's doing it too.
Well, I just see at Victory Square how popular the
Exactly, yeah,
volleyball
totally,
is.
totally, and that's like a mass of different cultures, because that's our immigration refugee centre, I suppose. But I think it is going to become more and more relevant reasonably quickly.
Pickleball and all those things.
Yeah. Actually, we might want to welcome some Afghani cricketers as well.
Yeah, I think it would be certainly something good to add there, and I know from my perspective this year of playing football, there were teams this year that were literally just families of Fijians or wherever they were from, you know, coming in to play the traditional sport, and I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no,
that's just trying to interpret stuff.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Actually, I think. All right, we're up to section on levels of service, page 31. It looks like there was one or two things that comes through in this. Because they were continued on the next page. It's kind of ands hang. There was an and hanging in the first. So there's a few missing words, I'm not sure.
Oh, right. And the community outcome.
Probably just column
got lost in that cell, I think.
Yeah,
Fix that.
might have been that the cells covered it up or something. But I'm intrigued. I'll raise it now rather than send it through. But Saxton Oval sometimes refers to the two ovals, cricket and athletics, and sometimes it refers to the cricket oval. So I'm just not quite sure when it's used, what it's referring to.
That's the cricket oval.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Usually when we mention Saxton Oval, cricket oval, Saxton Oval Pavilion is the one that goes by.
Yeah, between the two.
But if we're referring to the cycle track, do we sometimes call that a cycle oval? Is that what you're saying, Derek?
No, I was thinking athletics.
Athletics.
It's an oval, but
so we sometimes refer to that to the
cycle was
I've always
probably
referred to it as the athletics track, and budgets and. We referred to the athletics track as an oval.
So. The Saxton Oval boundary is the fence line, once you get to the oval, you enter in the complex. When you were talking about cricket, we were talking about cricket oval, we were talking about football, we were talking about football oval, we were talking about the oval pavilion. Maybe we need to
rename them.
So when it's talking about an oval, it's talking about
the fence boundary is the oval.
So that is including the athletics part of it. Yeah, that's what I thought it's often.
But for the purposes of the AMP and the budgets, a renewal for the oval is relating to the Saxton cricket oval.
So I think there is something in terms of transparency, so that people know exactly what we're talking about. That we can just so we don't have to have this sort of discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Be much more efficient.
Some consistency on it, I think. Yeah, that's right. And obviously, maybe there's a difference between the kind of planning stage and the operation stage that Mitch is involved in. Okay, it's 32. 31 on this report.
Can I just ask, if it's very minor, but I note there on the Saxton Stadium's well utilised, the current performance was 2688 hours, but then the performance target's actually less than that. And that's the same performance target for the next so many years. Is there any reason why we've gone under what it's actually doing?
I'd have to come back to you on that. I think it's just a measure that was, it's a new measure that was set at a rate. But I'd have to come back.
It does say there on the notes that
7 hours a
works
day.
out 7 hours a day, but I just note there that actually it looks like it's doing more than that at the moment. Why would you measure something at a lesser rate than what it does? So,
I'm wondering if it's related to the previously discussed points of the idea of decline, so, but yeah, we can.
Well, I think, you know, that has probably been in place for a little bit of time, the 2,500, but what you have done is you've agreed the marketing plan A for Saxton in the last term. And you would think if we were implementing the marketing plan well, like we made that investment to market, that we would be getting high levels or high quality levels of use. So I would actually support increasing that, which I think is what you're suggesting, Campbell.
yeah, that's what I would be supportive of.
So could I have a question through the chair? Because I used to read all the Nelson City Council minutes. From memory, I think the cost recovery on percentage is already higher than Nelson City Council's threshold, and perhaps that's where the hours have come from. So the percentage of cost recovery against the contract, I think it's probably where it is. I don't know, I'm looking to somebody. But I suspect that's probably where the hours have come through the baseline in terms of the percentage of cost recoveries that you expect from your facilities is possibly where, but there's no reason not to put it up.
I'd have to go back to Carl and Jane and check on that one, but I'm looking at the original parks and facilities and from last time, and the target was 1450 and the performance was 1097. So I think that's the booking system changing, but I don't really know whether it's a different way of measuring it or what the story is, but I'll come back to you.
And if you want to note, I'm more than happy for that performance target to go up if we seem to at the moment be doing more than that.
Yeah. Well over it. Okay, thanks, Campbell. Great. All right. Happy to go into the next section. This is life cycle management. Getting on page 33 of the agenda, 19 on the report, 22 on the report, sorry. I've got a bit of a question about the rubbish bins, because in the activity management plan, there's a question about those. I've also read somewhere recently that the Reserves Act were required to have rubbish bins, but now there's obviously a comment here that the existing rubbish bins have been removed. Well, I can assure you some of them are still there and they get filled very regularly by users, including schools that use it. So I'm not quite sure who is the event holder when schools come and use the athletics track as an example. So I don't know. Any comment, Mitch, on any of that? That's something I've been trying to have a discussion with you about.
Under our user agreement, the hirers should be disposing of their own rubbish. The bins that are situated around the reserve are generally for general day-to-day use. So if you're holding an event like a school athletics event, they should be taking their rubbish with them. But I'm sure that's not what's happening.
But are they paying a higher fee?
I don't think schools pay them.
No, that's right. So they kind of fall between a higher and a normal sense. Yeah.
And some councils will provide large bins for events and charge for the cost of providing those bins and the disposal as an extra.
Yeah.
I don't think
we do very much.
No, we do for the big events that we mentioned.
The really big ones, yeah.
And I don't think under the Reserves Act we are required to provide rubbish bins. I've never seen that in the Reserves Act as a requirement.
No, I can't remember where I saw it.
I'll find it for Andrew.
I've just searched rubbish in the Reserves Act and I found one thing about offences.
Okay.
That's it.
What about litter?
Litter.
Yeah.
I continue researching it.
I can't remember where I read it. I just thought Andrew, but yeah, anyway. All right, there's obviously a need and I can talk to them about the school use. The school use is quite heavy at the moment for the primary schools and intermediates. And we see, yeah, so obviously education later. Okay, page 34, capital
It all goes right through the page.
Yeah, that's true for quite a few, doesn't it? With reference to netball surface renewal, so obviously that's probably a bit of an issue.
Yeah,
Do you know about what form it might be?
that's, that's a conversation we can have with netball.
Yeah. It's clear if they have aspirations to covering some of them, then maybe it's not an asphalt surface, it's something else.
Yep.
Yeah.
About that.
Okay. Brent, you're right.
Yes, yeah,
You got something?
I think maybe this is the right place. So in terms, that's probably a question to him. Or it's probably a question to the councillors. In your long-term plan, are you envisioning that these are going to go through as they are, or is your council going to be looking at wanting to prune some capex? Because we're obviously in the middle of LTP at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this conversation starts or begins, but it would be nice to have some indication if you are looking at pruning that we look at the same places rather than come up with 5 different answers.
Happy to answer.
Tim's cutting back in every field, I heard. I heard you're cutting back everywhere.
Yeah, no, also can't speak on behalf of the rest of the councillors. Our experience in the past councils, there's been a lot of trust and understanding of decisions made at the joint council, and are also very aware that TDC run a very tight ship, understandably.
Yes.
In the past, I think probably been tighter than us. So speaking on past councils, no, we haven't come back and changed what's gone in. Often the opposite. We've pushed for a few things we felt, but understand it had to be a two-way decision, and that probably kept us on the straight and narrow from my perspective. And that I can't speak on behalf of our councillors. We're quite a new councils. There's a new councillors, new mayor, new CEO. But yes, we're under the same challenges as many to keep our rates down, and we have already taken a lot of stuff out of our budget. I don't sense we'd be looking at trying to pull stuff out of the Saxton budget, but I can't speak on behalf of other councillors. That's my sense as an individual. Campbell might have a different take on it.
Yeah.
So I would, but then I thought we were going to had a good understanding or good idea of where a vote would roll. Another previous council meeting that went a little bit different than I expected. I can't rule anything out, but I'd like to have a bit of confidence that councillors understand that we run a very, I think I'm more than impressed with how we run our budget, and second with respect to our TDC as well. Mutual.
So I presume before both draft LTPs get notified, there's still going to be a lot of crunching and discussion there. That's what you're alluding to, isn't it?
We've well through our, so just wondering the competitive level is the conversation.
That might be more than often.
So I think the officers obviously need to keep in touch, because it may well be that some of the capital items could be spread over X number of years rather than one lump or something. If that's something that the two councils can agree on. That probably needs to be done by the council.
I don't think it's out of turn, but my understanding from officers to date is it is in as per LTP, as in the joint committees at the moment. So
great.
So I guess if one council wants to change that, then they need to have a discussion with the other.
Actually, bar one item way at the end of the plan that maybe Grant can have a conversation with. I think it's that one item at the tail end that may have dropped out of our current projections. So I think it's just really important at officer level, and even if us will have some conversation about it, because we're going to be sitting around a table at TDC, like you and Cam are going to be at Nelson City Council, and if we can't answer those joint questions.
So you're talking about capital and operational.
Yeah, we haven't got an operational, but the stage capital.
Because the OPEX is actually the really challenging one.
For us, it's all OPEX except for the tail end of the park, because that's how we fund, because it sits in your books. So yes, so that's the next discussion is the OPEX, but the CapEx part in terms of any surprises from that are being flagged at any council's offices, so that we can at least keep in touch from our end with our officers and have their conversation.
My comment was that this is not the only activity that we fund together. There's two other business units, and the same discussions are being had about the capital and operation on that side of it as well. So it's probably a good idea that we do have some joint workshop to discuss all those. Should bear in mind. Yeah.
I think, for what it's worth, I agree with what Tim said before, but I think we should be looking and encouraging both our councils when we're having discussions around this stuff to bring them to joint council, as opposed to both our councils going off in a different direction and then trying to find each other and agree at a later date. But
okay, so I'm just hoping from Nelson City Council's stage, at the same time, currently in your draft numbers, your plan capex wise reflects this. And if it's awkward, you don't have to answer, but I guess that's the starting point. If it isn't, our guys need to know.
As far as I know, this is current.
Yeah. So what's gone through is the approved capital works program is currently sitting in our budget. That's not to say that something might happen, but like you say, it would have to be a joint discussion. The only other thing I'd add is that an enormous amount of it is renewals. There's not a huge elaborate amount of new capital, but I think there is some, but a lot of it is renewals.
Yeah. So that, it is going to Nelson, the AMP's going up to Nelson City Council on Thursday. So no more.
So I think there would just be a verbal update from what we've discussed today, that given that it comes back to the draft comes back to us early in the year or next meeting. Not adopted until nearly a year's time.
Yes, it might be adopted. So probably next time you see it, it might be a workshop before it's adopted, perhaps.
We could look at that.
And just remembering that that will exclude any land purchase that's a conversation currently in your LTPs as well. From Nelson Cities, I'm assuming it won't be there either.
Well, I think as Paul was saying before, that for Nelson City Council, that's a development contribution, so there might be reference to a potential land purchase, but it's not a separate budget item.
I'll give you a call to give a presentation at our council. I think that needs a nudge.
I'll watch it on Zoom, mate.
Kit was great like that. I reckon I need a little nudge. Say, Kit, can you come and have a chat?
I'll
give you a call. You'll be there.
So TDC doesn't yet have a time to consider this AMP. Just Nelson City Council.
Good question. We're talking about the budgets on whole as opposed to the AMP itself. So we're looking at the capital and operational funding that's coming through from Nelson on Saxton Field, and including it, rather than discussing the AMP specifically. Can I say also,
I mean, we'll just slot it, whatever's agreed at the end of the day, we'll slot into the AMP before we probably get it back stopped anyway.
So the process you've got a draft here, both councils consider it, and feedback comes back and look to modify the end because it's funded, then
that's right.
I know for Tasman, we've 3 months ago in our council, because we were hitting such in the capital space, we said, right, we've got to go through a must or should category. And the must means from a statutory reason we have to do it. The should means that like renewal could fit into a should, we should be doing it rather than carrying on sweating assets, and the could is a nice to have. So we went through each of the items and put them into one of those categories. Now, I'm not sure if that's been done into the Saxton Field yet, but I think Tasman district councillors would like to know that that's been through that sift, so that if everything's a must, then they've got to have a justification for it. Which ones are musts, which ones are shoulds, and which ones are could. Be quite good to have that exercise.
I'm not sure when we would have time to do that
No.
from the Saxton Field Committee.
Perhaps I'll leave that with Grant to talk through with Nelson on that.
Yeah, and then it depends on the criteria that you're using to determine what a must is, like, that long-term community impact sort of stuff. Is that a must or a should or a nice to have?
With the council on the reserve space, I know we identified things that went must, like $700,000 worth of savings on maintenance work. And the councillors basically said, well, sorry, I mean, you might think that's a should, but we might think it's a must because it's a community thing, it's a community face, so they've changed it, so that's fine. But at least we've put something up and gone through that scenario and let the councillors make a call on whether they accept that or not. And so incidentally, the 700,000 is back in again.
That's for now.
That's why the libraries who are going to have to now find 700,000.
So I'm not sure how the committee could do that process
No.
and the timeline as it's
No.
Richard, but I mean, maybe that's something.
No, I think that's really important by at officer levels, really engage between both, so
Yeah,
we don't get any surprise.
yeah,
So if the perceived rate increases that hard in both councils and there's some reductions and they happen to unfortunately fell out of this budget, that we actually agree where they fall together. We'll have some discussion where that is.
Yeah, so I think from Nelson City Council's perspective, I think we can probably give a very clear position today that what we're putting up is per this draft AMP that's going to council on Thursday. Council will make a decision on Thursday about what it wants to take and what it doesn't want to. We can give you that information. We just expect that same sort of level of information coming back from PDC.
okay. Thanks, Andrew. All right, can we move on to page 39? I think there's a bit of financial stuff here. This is what we've been talking about. Sustainability actions and initiatives. Climate change. Any queries, comments on any of those?
What page?
39 and 40 in the agenda. Sorry, or 28.
Yeah.
The report. So it's been,
I know I've been doing that the whole
I'm
time.
not sure which numbers to use. So report. So,
Big number and a small number.
I mean, I like the way that some of the, we've talked about high temperatures, this issue, the shade trees are starting to come through and having a positive benefit now for participants who want to get out of the sun for a while, if they can, their activities enable them. I did wonder whether under heavy rainfall flood events that at the top of page 40, significant flooding has been caused in the past, and I just wonder whether there should be an additional piece about the capacity of the waterways has been significantly increased. Some sort of indication that in the post of that major flood that came through, that there has actually been a lot of work done.
Yeah,
It's all going underneath the road over there. So
there's something in the second to last paragraph there.
down below what we were doing.
Yeah,
responding. Okay, good. Yeah, actually, I did make another note that there was some stuff there. Yeah. So I wonder whether at some point, maybe under this section, whether sustainability, whether there's any consideration of EV charging stations out this way for scooters and bikes and cars. It's another initiative, but I think it would be quite useful to under this to have a piece about the new bus service too. I think.
Yeah, true.
Because that's definitely made it easier, I think, for other people to get off and get
Oh,
away.
definitely.
Yeah, so I think it would be really good to cover that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. My son pays 50 cents on his B card to come to a volleyball, and it's fantastic.
Yeah,
Right.
so yeah, I think a lot more parents feel comfortable with the kids taking the bus out here now.
Certainly been very handy in my household.
Yeah. I think the only feedback I've had about the bus going there is some parents still feel a bit unsafe with the bus going, the kids crossing the main road there to get on their head home. And a few parents wish that the bus actually come more into Saxton Field, but that's for the transport team. So
there was some that came through, but obviously that's difficult for timetabling and speed and weight wise might be issues for the roads within the park as well.
Raise costs.
Okay, we're up to 41 risks. There's no other comments or queries. I thought there should be some reference to vandalism and how we try to deal with that. It's just been quite significant in some parts of the facilities here. We've had reports on those before. The one in TDC, the pavilion down there, certainly the facilities between the cricket and athletics oval has been subjected to vandalism in the past through. And other buildings have as well, so I think we should at least identify it and we don't know quite other than just coughing up money to do it.
Yeah, might be an assumption.
Yeah, and encourage people maybe to report it when they do see it, so it's through an 10 or something. Fix as quickly as possible. Anything else on this section? Risks, assumptions, bottom of page 41. I thought maybe instead of saying Saxton Open will continue to attract international games, we need to make it a may, because we can't guarantee that.
Are we putting that as an assumption or a risk?
So I was thinking it should be a risk.
Yeah, it's true. Should be under both, truly.
I guess it's an assumption because the budget's attached to maintaining.
Yeah, okay, well, that's worth. We need to clarify that. Page 43, even improvements for the 2027 AMT, this list, bullet point list there. I guess by the time we're looking at this, there may even be more suggestions. So, any comments or queries? So that brings us to the indices. So already that some of the financial stuff's been had a little bit of discussion, but is there any further discussion? I guess these will be raked over by both councils.
I've got an OPEX question, but if there's other Catholic first.
CapEx, any comment on any of those? These are as were recommended by the committee, so I guess the council will need to.
So Jim, just as a wording, it's going to be quite helpful. Notice CapEx sounds like Nelson City Council is going to fund all of this. And on the OPEX, and I'm wondering, this is 50-50 with Tasman, I'm presuming?
It is, but the majority of the CapEx is Nelson because it's Nelson land, so a lot of the money that Tasman spends is off it.
Okay, I just wonder whether some comment in there about the expectation that Tasman funds half of it.
And it's the next page.
Maybe this is going to be a public document that does need some comments, so it's easy to follow. Also the way that the books work, as I understand it, I don't totally have my head around it, but the way that one council pays some of the OPEX and then builds the other one, so that it's relevant. So maybe it's just needs a little bit of
put this paragraph in
there. Explanation on how that system works.
Yeah, so ours is listed as OPEX and expense. Because it's how we fund it, but the Nelson City Council part of BKFX.
I guess that's the challenge of having a joint one. We need to have a spreadsheet.
So page 33 on top there explains the funding. What cycle management.
Yeah, I could drop a bit of an abbreviated version of that appendix. It's an aspirational thing, but in future, it would be great to have some sort of an entity where both councils just pay it into it at the start of the year, and then that entity like a trust or something funded it, because it's a difficult thing to manage between councils.
Yeah.
They talk about BPOs.
Yeah, something like that.
There's an additional thing for staff to discuss, I think. Whether I guess we
can make it easier. We just put equal shares in a pot and then instead of you pay us something, we pay you something.
The calculation, because it's done quarterly, so it is quite intensive.
Yeah. All right, any other queries, comments on the CapEx stuff? This was approved by the committee. OPEX, page 47.
Yes, so sorry, through the chair, the questions that we haven't been able to get answers from, the council officers is, the first two, the maintenance costs and the operation costs. So according to our 21, 22, 22, 23, these are significantly, probably about 300K combined, more than what we did last year, and last year included 120K of additional unbudgeted income on the year before. So it's they're considerable increases in those lines that we have no idea what they're made up of. So it could probably be information between staff on those two lines.
What's the first two underneath?
Yeah, maintenance costs and for general in the stadium. So I think so the stadium example, and Rob's probably got it in front of him, we went from 217 to last year 341, but still with a budget figure of around 220 to now 435, and just going, we have no idea how that's. And so if that's a extra 100,000 or 90,000 from us, that's an extra 180,000 combined. What's that? And then the maintenance is the same, so it goes from 220K to 460. We have no idea what that is.
So I guess that's something that.
So Brent did enter a question.
I don't know.
Did anybody follow up on that? The 435, I think. We didn't know what you were talking about.
That was in the
number of
TDC budget, which
435.
I wasn't familiar with, so.
So my understanding is either our CEO or COO had an email from somewhere in Nelson City, and there was a 435K line for Saxton Field. That was about the breadth of information that we had.
Yeah, I think we were confused because I think the email said an additional 435 and we weren't sure where it was. We were looking for it and you found something in Tasman which we passed on. But then we weren't sure.
We can just cancel it. We just don't.
We can discuss.
I need to understand what it was and where it came from.
Yeah.
So somebody put that in.
But it's in the TDC budget, which came from TDC, so it needs to be. Is it a percentage of our expense, or so we need to talk and come back to it?
Yeah, can we get together and
Yeah,
kick the tires on this a bit more?
Yeah, so we don't know if that's reflecting in these increases or whether that's plus or at one stage we're going, oh, they got the land cheaper. Well, no, we just had no idea. We couldn't get any clarity from.
Yeah, I mean,
Andrew couldn't give us any.
Yeah, no idea. So we'll just, I think Grant and team can work on giving us the background. If we need to update this, then we can.
Yeah, so keen to understand the increases, what they are, what the differences are, in a time where we're being asked on every budget line, is this a must or a should or could?
Okay, cool. Sounds like further discussions and investigations. Okay, so 47 gets over to topics from NCC's perspective. Comments on that? Page 49. Into that section, and then we're up to page 60 or 39 in the report numbers. 50, sorry, or 39. Appendix 2, which is Saxton Field Capital Works Program, as adopted, so that's in there for some information. Seen, well, this has come through from our last meeting. Councillors to consider. Appendix 3 is Saxton Field Development Plan, where it's currently at. I guess with the skate park facility mentioned on the formerly known as Circus Green. Maybe that needs to change or something. The circuses are not going to be there. And then there's appendix 4, building data. The first one my understanding is that Bicycle Nelson Bays are now separately incorporated, so the Nelson Environment Centre, which I am a board member of, we were umbrellaing there because they were not a constituted organisation, so they have done that now. So I presume that lease in due course would be changed over to Bicycle Nelson Bays Incorporated, if that's what Lightning wants to do. Anything else on those, the building data? 42, Appendix 5, the relevant resource consents. Actually, this might have been where I read about the letter. Still facing a different acts.
Do we know what the reason, what the situation is with the resource consent for the pumping the water from wells expired in 2009? Is that still a relevant resource consent?
No, don't know what the purpose of it is. We use well water still for irrigation?
Oh, literally.
I don't think.
Well, that might not be a relevant consent anymore.
So there'll be a bit of a check for that, because I don't know whether Relay for Life haven't operated out here for quite a few years, have they? They would be maybe.
That's interesting.
So maybe a little check of those.
Yeah, what's still relevant.
Still currently expired, yeah. Guess we only want the current ones in. Okay, the key, Appendix 6 is the key legislation pieces that relate with Saxton Field. And 54 is under the Litter Act, is the one that I remembered reading earlier. So, just drawn that to Andrew's attention. So
that's interesting, but that is not what the Litter Act says.
okay, you've looked at it. So.
I'm looking at it now.
Right, maybe there's a little bit of checking there. Next page was 55, up to the L's in the alphabetical order of the X. 56. And then we get on 57 to key industry standards and guidelines. There's other stuff comes through from national organisations, whether that's standards and guidelines that could be in there, I don't know. Bylaws, certainly NCC bylaws, other. I guess they'll all be NCC ones, won't they? Because there's all else in the city. Yeah, like many others. And Appendix 7, energy and carbon saving opportunities. See it included.
Yeah, that's from a draft report, so that might be updated before the final comes up.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Anything else that anybody's wants to raise? Otherwise, we've kind of got through that report. There's no other comments from anybody.
I'd just say, I think the team that has put this together has done a really impressive job, given it is the first version of this actually AMP. So it's not going to be perfect, but it's a huge piece of work to pull this out and get it roundabout right. So I think the team really needs some credit for that amount of work that they put together in this.
Yeah, I totally endorse those comments. Yeah, it's quite a big challenge to do stuff across both councils. Big enough challenge to do it within one, let alone We'll have that across too, so yeah.
And yeah, and it will evolve, it'll build on it, and even when the final comes back, it will just communicate with the committee, and if we want a workshop before it, go through them up.
Yep.
I just had one question, if Mr. Kirby was saying that it's not going to be adopted by Tasman Council, eventually it's not going to be approved. If that's the case, do we need to change the resolution today? Or is that just an administrative thing that we don't worry about? My understanding was that both councils were going to approve the draft, so that's what the resolution kind of says.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure about that. I know that we've fed the financial data into our LTP.
No, I just mean the draft then, but that's okay. Well, maybe maybe the resolution's broad enough to not worry about. Just that recommendation that.
So I guess if we're only recommending if TDC don't agree to adopt it, I guess that's their call, isn't it?
It'd be good that we did adopt it. I think, this gives a clarity of one place for information, really. So we don't have to keep looking at our own separate reserve management plans by MPs. We can actually just go to this one document. So I'd be encouraging that we got a paper in front of council.
I just wasn't sure what Richard's comment was.
No. Maybe he was talking more LTP and budget lines.
Maybe.
And
rather than.
I mean, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't be putting it up.
We need to move.
Yeah, so back to page 7, the recommendations there that we should consider. This one, the Saxton Field Committee received the draft activity management plan and the various comments relating to notes. And this will be updated. It's final one being approved after the LTP, and then the recommendations to the two councils about approving it as a draft, I guess, at this point. But Tim's moved. Have a seconder for that?
Maybe a second.
Brent, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Right, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. We don't have any confidential business today, but I would just like to draw to your attention, this is the last meeting that Andrew Pestrum will be attending, so come up, Andrew.
I'll move.
Chair. So the younger on that one there.
The younger Andrew's giving way to the older one, but yes. As most of you are probably aware, Andrew's been heavily involved in Parks and Reserves through the whole City Council, but also on Saxton Field with a lot of work. He's always carefully guarded the development plan, kept it up to date, loyally carried that around, and the numerous upgrades, and had lots and lots of discussions with lots and lots of codes and other in terms of some of the land purchase things that have ended up increasing over the time that he's been on council. I think the first block was probably bought before you turned up, wasn't it? The initial block?
Yes, it was. I started here in 1986 and Peter Malone brought me out, and he very proudly showed me his mates from the Vintage Machinery Club who were ploughing up and trying to plough a football field. And they'd do about 3 furrows and then they'd knock off on their lunch, and then they'd do another 3 and then they'd go home. And I'd come from Hamilton City Council, where we were developing 50 hectares a year using laser technology and high-tech stuff. So Peter was quite keen to hand it over to me. But I've had tremendous support from the various sporting bodies, all the codes, and it's just really been a matter of just sort of herding them along in the right direction to get the various projects over the line. But I must say, from a Nelson's perspective, how much I've appreciated the support from Tasman District. First of all, from Lloyd and the councillors, and then carrying on from there. And it's been really a joint development. And it's one thing that I think we get a lot of complaints at council, but we don't get complaints about Saxton Field. Everyone appreciates Saxton Field. And it was quite good today to sit in the background and not make any contributions and see that it's in good hands going forward. So I thank you and congratulate you. Hope it goes well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
so
will you be handing over your plan to someone as part of a handover? Will you take them with you?
You'll probably come to public forum.
I can assure you, I won't be writing letters to the paper.
I'm sure you can find our phone number.
But I know where you live.
yeah, and I'm sure his knowledge is going to be called on. I can't imagine that when he finally steps away from the job that he's going to be allowed to stay away. I'm sure there'll be phone calls saying, what's the background to this issue? How did this happen? So, no, we just need to escape.
I won't be removing your title on my phone number for you as council officer.
Yeah, it's in good hands. So just thank you, because Andrew has this kind of, it's quite a softly approach at working with a whole diversity of people. And I saw it when I was on city council, and sometimes, you know, he had to kind of smile very sweetly, and he was very good at doing that and convincing even some of the harder councillors that what he was putting forward was worth supporting, even though there was a cost increase and all those sort of things. But he just had a way with not only the councillors, but also with a lot of the parties that he dealt with to actually find out a resolution or get an agreement on sometimes very tricky issues. Negotiating land deals is not always easy. So he's done a magnificent job for that. So a wonderful legacy. Well done. Thank you.
We tried to get him to sort radio in New Zealand before it left, but he hasn't managed it.
I thought that was a part of the plan.
Minutes. That's a condition.
It seemed like it was.
Yeah, well, I kept reminding him of that too, but I thought I wouldn't embarrass him to ask him that today, so I asked him in the car coming out. So yeah, next day I wasn't allowed to leave and sort it out. But when he's in the United States, I make that slip away. So hopefully other staff will know that that's still an ongoing issue, and there will be some further discussions to happen on that.
Yeah, Paul and our property officer are working on that, and the matter goes to the broadcasting board meeting in December, where they'll be looking at what their intentions going forward. But I'm fairly positive, and it will happen.
Yeah, cool. Can we call? We know where he lives, so we can go and remind you of that.
Is that in Beverham Park?
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. I think, thank you. Job very well done. Anybody else want to make any comments before we close the meeting?
Only just to absolutely thank you and acknowledge you, Andrew, from different roles that I've been involved with, is just echoing Derek, is that you've just always had that vision and that belief, and you've inspired that on others. So it's always awesome somebody having a project, but when you've taken 2 councils on that journey, that's legacy. So well done.
Yep. Thank you. Well done. Okay. Somebody got a carrot here for closing the meeting that would like to read?
It's Mr. Kirby says that you do it. Kia watia tia mama tia manawa o te tangata. Kia uki te ara mo te atau o ora nei, ko rongo ki runga, kia tina hui e, taiki e.